The Tennessee Titans take on the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 14, and it's a must-win game for head coach Brian Callahan. I'll explain why on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. You could start the final third of the NFL season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's episode, I'm going to explain why this is a must-win game for Brian Callahan. We're going to talk about some of the players who need to step in and play more for the Titans, including Mason Kinsey at punt returner, and we'll do some injury updates for the Titans as they get ready for this divisional matchup. Before we dive in, though, do want to thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. And speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one, because tomorrow is going to be crossover Thursday with my guy Tony Wiggins from Locked On Jaguars. Then I'm going to have my game plan episode for you guys to finish out the week. And then I'll be going live immediately after the game ends on Sunday to break down all the action. With that being said, do want to dive into today's show. And look, it's a must-win game for Brian Callahan in this matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. There's no other way around it. They have to win this football game. And I know that a lot of people will say the same thing that we've heard throughout the last few weeks. No, it'd be better for the Titans to lose. Jacksonville is a team that you're directly competing with for a draft pick. But at the end of the day, I feel like a loss at home to the Jacksonville Jaguars with Mac Jones at quarterback would be far more detrimental to the Tennessee Titans' future than winning this game and hurting the draft pick. Like, there is a human element to this that I've been talking about throughout the last few weeks. And that win against the Houston Texans was exactly what the Titans needed to keep the locker room afloat at the end of the day and keep the team having belief in Brian Callahan as their head coach going forward. I think you lose this game at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars, it's totally different than losing on the road against a playoff team and the Washington Commanders, where you had a couple of fumbles early on and it just got you down too much. Losing this game to a Jacksonville team that you are better than. The Titans are not better than the Washington Commanders football team, but the Titans are better than the Jacksonville Jaguars, especially without Trevor Lawrence in this game. So there is no excuse whatsoever that the Titans can make to lose this game at home to a divisional rival. Divisional games mean more. I talked about it when they beat the Houston Texans just 2 weeks ago, that this game is not a game that you could just say, oh, they should lose for draft position, because you are going to play your division rivals every single year multiple times, and winning those games. And obviously there's the Amy Adams Strunk side to the Houston Texans win that the Titans had. But these divisional games mean more. All right, they just mean more. And again, the Washington Commanders are a playoff team. They're a good football team, whereas the Titans are not a good football team. They're not a playoff team. So it's understandable to go on the road and lose to a playoff team, even if it was ugly. But it is not acceptable to be at home against a team that you're much better than with their backup quarterback in and lose that game. That sort of loss would have a far more detrimental impact to the Tennessee Titans' future, the locker room's belief in the coaching staff, than losing against Washington did. It's a totally different level of impact based on one loss against another loss. So this is a must-win game for Brian Callahan to keep the locker room afloat, and especially, I would say, after the way that the locker room responded from that loss last week, where Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is saying the cold got to people, and Jeffrey Simmons is saying that there was a hangover from winning the game against the Houston Texans. Like, whether those things are true or false, when you have players in the locker room starting to call out other guys and starting to make excuses for the way that they're losing, things can go bad very, very quickly. And I do fear what would happen within the locker room if the Tennessee Titans lost this game to Mac Jones, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and a lame duck coach like Doug Peterson. The Titans could simply not afford to lose this game. So they have to make sure that they have a solid plan against this football team, that they come out and are locked in early on. And quite honestly, I think the Titans will be. I think after the loss to the Washington Commanders, I think the Titans are going to be much more locked in. They're going to be embarrassed. They're going to be hungry. They're going to be ready to go. It is literally the opposite of what happened against the Houston Texans, where I do agree with Jeffrey Simmons. There is a little bit of a hangover because I was talking about it last week, literally a week ago. I was saying that there would be a little bit of a hangover from the emotional win against the Houston Texans to be on the road in back-to-back weeks. That is something that is going to matter, and it mattered immediately against the Washington Commanders. So this week, I see the exact opposite of that. The Titans aren't going to be hungover. The Titans aren't going to be down physically from the travel. The Titans are going to be ready to go. They're going to be at home. They're going to be charged up. They're going to be extra motivated. Now, you would hope that the Tennessee Titans as a football team wouldn't need all of these circumstances to be motivated to play a football game and to win a football game and to come out and put their best foot forward right off of the kickoff. But that is where this football team is right now. So for Brian Callahan's standing within the locker room and the belief in Brian Callahan within not only the locker room, but within this organization going forward, the Tennessee Titans absolutely have to win this game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It is as much of a must-win football game as they have played all season. And it's bigger than, hey, this is a must-win because the Titans have to stay in the playoff hunt, or this is a must win because the Titans got to keep their season alive, like we were talking about against the Miami Dolphins, like we were talking about against the Indianapolis Colts out of the bye. This is a must win for the soul of the football team going forward. This win matters way more than just 2024. It matters for 2025 and beyond for the Tennessee Titans. So no excuses whatsoever. Brian Callahan has to find a way to get his football team a win in this game. No doubt about it. And one of the ways that they can make sure that they get a win is to play players who are going to have tremendous effort and who are simply going to get the job done. And I'm going to tell you who I think needs to play this week for the Tennessee Titans right now, and then we'll do a little bit of an injury update at the end of the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and then your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. So say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All the plans come with a high-speed data plan and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. So to get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL to cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. $45 upfront payment is required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower at 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Today's episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to play daily fantasy sports. That's why they have over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks makes daily fantasy sports accessible to all because all you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. You can run your game all season long on Prize Picks. It's so simple. You just pick 2 to 6 players and say whether they're going to do more or less than the Prize Picks projection. Justin Jefferson, 83.5 receiving yards. Lamar Jackson, 1.5 passing touchdowns. Like, you just look at the projection and say whether the player is going to do more or less. And Prize Picks is so easy. You could set your lineup in 60 seconds or less. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. It's Prize Picks. Run your game. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about why this is a must-win victory, or a must-win game, needs to be a victory, for Brian Callahan in Week 14. But now I want to talk about one of the good ways that you can make that victory happen. And it's by playing certain players who deserve to be out there. And before we get into it, I do want to thank you again for making Locked On Titans your first to listen each and every day. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. Also want to let you guys know a Will Levis film breakdown going over his pinpoint accuracy under pressure in Week 13 against the Washington Commanders is now up on the Tic Tac Titans YouTube channel, my film channel that's free all year round. Make sure that you get into the description of this podcast, click the link, head to the Tic Tac Titans YouTube channel, and check out that film breakdown on Will Levis. But with that being said, number one on my list here is Mason Kinsey. Mason Kinsey needs to play. Mason Kinsey needs to be called up to the active roster this weekend and be the returner for the Tennessee Titans. It's hilarious to me that out of all of the Pro Bowl spots in the AFC, there is one Tennessee Titan who is the leading vote getter for their position. Who do you think it is? It is Jha'Quan Jackson at returner in the AFC. He's the leading vote getter for Pro Bowl. Jha'Quan Jackson, the guy who has had a fumble 5 out of the last 6 weeks. See, folks, this is why fans have no business whatsoever voting on awards or accolades. Fans are the worst possible way to go about picking winners for these things. And look, there are downfalls to the players, there are downfalls to the media, but we know unequivocally that fans are the worst people to ask about who's good and who's not. Okay? It's just the reality. Because, again, Jha'Quan Jackson, leading vote getter in the AFC for returner. Not only should Jha'Quan Jackson not be anywhere near the Pro Bowl, he shouldn't even have a starting spot on the Titans, let alone the AFC Pro Bowl roster. It's time to bring Mason Kinsey back. And look, you know, some people in the fan base really dislike Mason Kinsey because he is overloved. I wouldn't say overrated, because I think even the people who like Mason Kinsey know his talent level and don't overrate how good he is. They just like him because he's a good story and he balls out in the preseason and he's reliable when he does play. And that's what the Titans need right now at returner. They need reliability, because what they cannot afford is to have more turnovers on special teams. They can't fumble kickoff returns. They can't fumble punt returns. They have to prevent that from happening. If Mason Kinsey has a fair catch on every single return that he has the rest of the season, that would be a better outcome than what has happened to the Titans over the last few weeks with Jha'Quan Jackson. They cannot allow it. Brian Callahan cannot put Jha'Quan Jackson back out there in a returning role. They can't. So you bring in Mason Kinsey, who, again, at minimum, is a reliable player. To me, it's a similar conversation to Jack Gibbons or Nicholas Westbrook-Akine, but on a different level, on a lower level. Of course, NWY is at a higher level, Jack Gibbons is in the middle, and Mason Kinsey is at the lower level of that conversation. But the principle of that conversation is all the same. Does this guy wow you? Does he have explosive potential? Is he a high-level starter? No. But is he reliable? Will he get the job done? Will he hurt the football team? No. The answer to that question is also no. And we've seen what Nick Westbrook-Akine has done with his opportunities. 8 touchdowns and less than 20 catches. Jack Gibbons, people love hating on Jack Gibbons. But how did the linebacker play look when Jack Gibbons was gone with Jerome Baker out there? I was desperately missing Jack Gibbons watching Jerome Baker defend the run. And I feel the same with Mason Kinsey in the punt return duties. I don't care that Mason Kinsey isn't going to break off a big return. I don't care that Mason Kinsey probably isn't going to get any snaps at wide receiver. I don't need him to play wide receiver. Jha'Quan Jackson only gets 2 snaps a game at wide receiver. I need somebody who's going to catch the football and not fumble. And that's Mason Kinsey. And he proved it last year in the opportunities that he got. And he proved it in the preseason as well. Bring up Mason Kinsey. I think they're out of practice squad elevations. You can only elevate a guy twice during a season from practice squad to the game day roster. And I think they've already done that twice with Mason Kinsey earlier in the year. So they're going to have to give him a 53-man roster spot. And that's not incredibly appetizing, I admit. But at the end of the day, the alternative is to fumble kickoffs and fumble punts. And you cannot afford to have that happen anymore. So bring in Mason Kinsey. Another guy that I want to see play is Tyjae Spears. I get that they were bringing him back from the concussion, and he's had some other injuries this year. And Brian Callahan said in his press conference, 1, that he was considering Mason Kinsey as the internal option. And then 2, that they wanted to bring Tyjae Spears along slowly because he didn't get to practice a ton last week because he was a little limited. But they need Tyjae Spears this week. Tony Pollard has had an incredible burden to bear this year. If they want him to survive the rest of the season, they need to get Tyjae Spears more involved. Tyjae Spears is a more explosive running back than Tony Pollard. He isn't as physical, but he's more explosive in open field. And Tony Pollard had a couple of drops last week. And I think it's fatigue that is causing the drops with Tony Pollard. He's tired. He was never meant to be a bell cow running back like Derrick Henry is. He was supposed to rotate with Tyjae Spears. And even if he's the lead back in the committee, it was always meant to be a committee. And because of Tyjae Spears' injuries, it hasn't been that for most of this year. And they have to find a way to get Tyjae Spears more involved this week to spell Tony Pollard down the back half and create more explosive opportunities in open field. They got to get Tyjae Spears more involved. And on the defensive side, you need to play James Williams or Cedric Gray on early downs. If you want to bring Jerome Baker in on more passing heavy downs because he is a better coverage linebacker than those guys, then fine. But on first and second and long, you need to bring in James Williams and Cedric Gray. We need to start seeing some of these young linebackers and see what they have, not only to help the run defense, but to figure out if the Titans need to go linebacker again in the draft. They need to figure out what they have in these young linebackers so they know how to approach the draft. And these last few games of the season are exactly where they need to get their answers. So at least on 1st and 10, second and long, run situations, get James Williams or Cedric Gray out there next to Kenneth Murray. And Kenneth Murray has a hamstring injury. Is he going to be able to go? I don't know, but I want to see some of these young linebackers out there. Last week, the Titans brought in Luke Gifford when Kenneth Murray got his hamstring injury. Luke Gifford is a special teams only player. He's a good special teams player, but he is not a good linebacker. And with the future of this linebacker position so in flux and what they're going to do in the draft, they have to get these young linebackers ready to play this week. So those are guys that I want to see play this week. Mason Kinsey, Tyjae Spears, and one of these young linebackers needs to get an opportunity. But with that being said, we got some injury updates for the Titans. It's going to have a major impact on the cornerback position. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You need to get ready to tackle the final third of the NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. And speaking of live bets, betting for punts to happen by the Titans and the Jaguars in this game, I think is probably a good option for you. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, like Titans are about to punt, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And Titans money line is a good first $5 bet, in my opinion. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about why it's a must-win for Brian Callahan, not only for this year, but for next year as well. We talked about some players that I want to see play against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now it's time to do some injury updates, and it's going to have a major impact on the Titans secondary. But with that being said, thank you again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, make sure that you check out Locked On NFL. I'm the lead host of Locked On NFL in the mornings. Tony Wiggins from Locked On Jags, who we're going to talk to tomorrow on the crossover episode. He's the host of Locked On NFL in the afternoons. You get all your Titans news here with me in under 30 minutes for free every single day. Get your NFL news with me for free in under 30 minutes every single day at Locked On NFL. But I'll say multiple injuries coming out of the Titans' loss to the Washington Commanders. We'll start with what might be the biggest one, and it's a shoulder injury for Roger McCreary. It feels like Roger McCreary, Titans slot cornerback, has been dealing with this shoulder injury for quite some time, and he re-aggravated it against the Washington Commanders, and he left the game and did not return late in the game. And McCreary has just been a stud this year. Has anybody out there complained about Roger McCreary? I haven't seen a single person. And good, they shouldn't. He is an excellent slot cornerback for the Tennessee Titans. But if you're the Titans, I think this would be a good opportunity to rest Roger McCreary. He's clearly banged up. He's played the entire season. I think it would be a good chance for the Titans. Now, Roger McCreary should play if he's ready to go and play. But with this lingering shoulder injury, I think you would do him a disservice by continue to put him out there at less than 100%. Especially, again, I think this week affords you an opportunity to let him sit and not have a major drop-off in production. And why is that? Because Chidobe Awuzie is set to come back for the Titans. So he's been on IR for quite some time, since the beginning of the season. He returned to practice last week, and the Titans said last week, we're not going to let him play in the game yet. We need him to get back in condition. We need him to get back in shape. Let him practice. But Brian Callahan has said that they do plan to activate Chidobe Awuzie this week. Well, Darrell Baker Jr. has been playing great at cornerback. And Jarvis Brownlee Jr., despite the penalties, has played well at cornerback as well. And they've been playing on the outside with Roger McCreary on the inside at slot corner. Well, if you recall, Jarvis Brownlee Jr. was drafted, expected to be a slot cornerback. And Jarvis Brownlee Jr. even said himself that I would like to play inside at the NFL level. So, you sit Roger McCreary, let his shoulder heal, you bring Chidobe back, you play Chidobe and Darrell Baker Jr. on the outsides, and then you put Jarvis Brownlee Jr. in the slot. And that allows you not only to keep up your general talent level at the cornerback position, but also it allows you to actually get a look at Jarvis Brownlee Jr. I'm getting a little far ahead of myself, I know. But next year is a contract year for Roger McCreary. And I would like to see the Titans bring Roger McCreary back. However, you do have to think about what value a slot cornerback has in the NFL. Slot cornerbacks typically don't get paid a lot of money. And if Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is better as a slot cornerback, and you have paid L'Jarius Sneed, and you've paid Chidobe Awuzie, and you maybe draft Travis Hunter, who plays cornerback most of the time with part-time wide receiver duties, something like that. I'm just saying, I think there is a world where the Titans don't pay Roger McCreary at slot cornerback, and they move Jarvis Brownlee Jr. there full-time after next season. That's at least a possibility that they are going to consider inside the building. Now, I want Roger McCreary back, just to be clear, but I'm just saying there are different avenues to take this thing. So it would at least give you a look at that as well. And let's assume, which is probably the wrong thing to do, but let's say Cheeto and Snead are healthier next year. Where does that leave Jarvis Brownlee Jr.? Where does that leave Roger McCreary? How do you play those guys? You got to get Jarvis Brownlee Jr. on the field. So I'm just saying, interesting thing to watch going forward. Now, Kenneth Murray Jr. has a hamstring injury. Brian Callahan talked about, we'll have to see how that goes in practice. I don't think that Kenneth Murray Jr. will play this week. So like I said, I want to see these young linebackers. Do not play Luke Gifford at linebacker. But we got to watch the injury status of Kenneth Murray. Also, T'Vondre Sweat looked banged up. I'm not excusing his performance, and I haven't, but you could tell early in that game, he slammed onto the ground, and he is holding that shoulder, man. So he's banged up. J.C. Latham at one point got hurt. He got hit in the quad. It was pretty bad, according to Brian Callahan, but J.C. Latham played the entire game, so I expect him to play again this week, but still something to watch going forward. But with that being said, that's going to do it for injury updates. Those are players that I want to see get opportunities in Week 14, and that's why this game is a must-win for Brian Callahan. Make sure to check out my Will Levis film breakdown on the Tic Tac Titans YouTube channel. It's for free. It's for free, and we have a lot of conversations about what I see on film on this show. So you got to pair those conversations up with the actual film breakdowns that I'm doing on YouTube at Tic Tac Titans. But make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed, throw a thumbs up on the video, throw a tighten up down in the chat. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.